This is your host, Marisol, a expat lifestyle and business coach, bringing you an episode of Roaming the Now, where expat entrepreneurs, coaches, and mentors come together to give you a behind-the-scenes look at the real and raw experience of what it actually means to set out to a new country and build a life and business abroad. Like and subscribe if you found some value in this episode, and check out the links in the description. You can find the link to get the Roaming the Now episodes delivered directly to your inbox in the description below. Hello and welcome to Roaming the Now. This is your host, Marisol, and today I have Amanda with us, who is a life coach specifically for expats. So I'm super excited to see what Amanda has to share, as this is like so super specific. Amanda, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you. First of all, thank you for being on the podcast. I really appreciate the invitation. So I'm Amanda. I'm Dutch. I currently live in the Netherlands as well. And I'm a life coach for expats and globetrotters. And I chose this group because I was a diplomat and expat myself a couple of years ago. I lived abroad for over 7 years myself. And when I made a career switch to life coaching, I knew instantly I want to guide expats and other international people in their lives, because I love this group. They're so self-reliant, they're so adventurous, independent. They achieve a lot, actually. And I really love working with them. So I work one-on-one with expats and globetrotters, either online or here in The Hague. And I also have an online course called Expat Life School, where I help them navigate expat life a little bit more, and also teach them how they can create their best life abroad. And that's what I do in, actually, I think I would say 18 out of 24 hours a day, because I work a lot. And in my free time, I like to run, play with my Brazilian cats, meet up with friends, dance, read, that kind of stuff, and travel, obviously.
Obviously, right? I love how you mentioned that your cats are Brazilian. I really love.
Yeah.
I know that, like, through looking at your social media, like, you love Latin America. So
Yes.
I'm not in Latin America technically. I am, but I'm not. I'm in Mexico. Technically, I'm part of North America.
Yeah. But you are
Wait,
part of Latin America, right? So
yes.
Mexico is North America, but you are culturally part of Latin America. And that's the continent that has stolen my heart many, many years ago. I went to Brazil the first time when I was 17. And basically, I think almost every year in my adult life, I came back to Latin America if I wasn't already living there. So my last adventure was 3 years in Brazil, where I worked at the Dutch embassy in Brasilia, the capital. But I also traveled for a year and a half through South America when I was like 21. I was supposed to stay away for like 7 months, but it turned into a year and a half. And I also lived 6 months in Argentina, did some research for my thesis in Ecuador. Like, I just love living there. I feel so Latin from the inside, even though you wouldn't say with my looks, but I feel half Latina.
I mean, it is. It's the culture. Like, the culture here is so
Yeah.
just. It's vibrant. It's welcoming. It's warm. It's fun, and
Yes.
I really think that's why when I came here, like, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm home. Even, like, technically I
Yeah.
am home, like, ancestrally.
Yeah.
um, However, like, I had never had that sense of home in the US. I had never
Yeah.
found it, like, through moving around, but when I came to Mexico, it was really just this feeling of like, I'm home. Like, I
Yeah.
found my place, which was super amazing.
That's
I
so
would
nice.
love I would love for you to share, just like talking about what was that career like, moving around and like knowing that like you're going somewhere for a fixed point of time and then you're
Yeah.
gonna go somewhere else.
Yeah. So before, when I moved abroad, it was on my own terms, right? So I was either traveling, I was studying in London, decided to stay there and find a job there. And then I moved back to the Netherlands to become a diplomat. And the first 2 years I spent at the headquarters in The Hague in the Netherlands. And then I was going to Brazil initially for 2 years, but they eventually extended my stay. And to me, it was actually really nice, because a lot of people told me like, "Oh, the move must be so hard," and I thought, "Are you kidding? Like, I get people that move everything for me. I don't even need to lift a finger. They wrap everything in boxes and they ship everything for me. Like, there was zero effort from my side." So I really experienced like moving abroad with the ministry as a really, really nice. And knowing that I was going to stay there for 2 years also made me do so much more. So I actually really enjoyed knowing that it was a fixed period, because I thought I'm only here for just 2 years, so I need to make the most of every single weekend. So I didn't do something every weekend, but I did travel a lot because I loved living in Brazil. I wanted to explore the country, and I knew I only have 2 years here, so I have to make the most of my time here. Um, and I think 3 years eventually was the perfect amount of time for me there. Um, but yeah, when you sign up to become a diplomat, you can be dropped anywhere, basically. I mean, I do have a saying in it as well. Um, but I always liked it. I like a challenge. I like an adventure. There were a few countries I didn't want to go to, so I didn't sign up for those, like Belgium, which is right around the corner. But I actually really enjoyed being away with a Dutch organization, and also with a fixed period. Yeah, to me, it was really good.
Yeah, and I can imagine like that's really a cool way to travel because yes, you get to go to the places that like you want to go and you explore, but also knowing you have to go to some places that you're not super excited to go to. So
Yeah.
like what was that experience like? Like to go like so there were some countries you didn't want to travel to, but obviously that's where your work was taking you. So what kind of went through your mind in that transition process? You were like, oh, I'm here. This is not like my first pick, but here I am.
Well, so I never had that experience very happily. Like Brazil was my number one choice, and I got it. So I was really happy with that. And then after 3 years, I moved back to the Netherlands because I was allowed to go to another embassy in another country, but I thought it would be good to grow some roots, because I had been abroad for so long in my formative years of my 20s and early 30s. So I wanted to go back home again, but I did have the choice to go abroad. So I never had that experience of like, okay, I need to go to that country where I don't want to be. And also in the Netherlands, they've modernized it a little bit. So as a diplomat, you get to apply to certain jobs internally, and then the embassy picks whoever they want to have. And there are a few additional rules, obviously, but you get a really big saying in where you're going to go. So that really helps. Yeah,
That's
so I
cool.
was really lucky.
Yeah, I was
Actually,
gonna say.
the only part I didn't like about the job was being back home in the Netherlands.
Well, that's that's interesting because you just said earlier, like the importance of like building roots, right? Like
Yeah,
building roots, creating roots for yourself. And as amazing as traveling is and moving around, as I say, like when I first got to Mexico, like I moved around like 8 times. Like I was moving, grooving. I didn't have someone to pack my things, so that was me.
yeah,
I was doing that. And that was the experience that really made me realize like I actually would like some roots. Like I would like a home
mhm,
and like a community and I want to settle down. So curiously for you, like
yeah.
what was kind of that feeling or that moment when you realized you wanted to have roots as well?
Yeah, so it was, I think, very similar to yours. Like I realized, okay, I love living abroad, but it also, I lived abroad when I was 20, 21, then 24, 22 again, I'm not sure, till 25, and then late 20s, early 30s again. And I realized I don't have a home. So I had my friends from university, from high school still, but there was nothing more recent in the Netherlands. And there wasn't one place I was going to except my family and my hometown. Um, and being in Brazil, it wasn't like I was longing for those roots or to go back home, but I thought it was a wise decision. And I also knew at that time that I wanted to quit my job. So I knew like, okay, I want to move home and start my company there. So there was a bit of feeling like, okay, I think it's good for me to grow some roots. I think it will be good for me for the rest of my life. And also, I miss my family. I miss missing all the important moments with them as well, my friends. But there was also a big element to it that was just more rational. I would have to say it was also a rational choice.
Yeah. Well, I really love that you highlight that because as you know, as amazing as travel is, I feel like we all come to a moment because I moved a lot, similarly, moved around a lot. Like the minute I was able to leave home, I was like, okay, bye. See you all later.
Yeah,
But as you kind of mature and as you like get kind of used to moving around, you're just like, huh, like having a sense of home and having community, family, and everything seems really nice. And you are a business owner. You are a life
yeah,
coach for expats. And so I would love for you to kind of share, being that you had this job that did give you freedom in a sense, right? You had the freedom to choose where you're going to
yeah,
go live for a period of
yeah.
time,
Sure.
explore. What was that sensation, feeling, knowing that had you, quit the job and then transition into being life coach for expats?
Yeah. So I think there were two aspects to it. One was that the organization that I was working at was very bureaucratic, slow, internally focused, hierarchical. And those were things that didn't really match with my personality. So I didn't really feel like I was thriving in my job. Like I was doing a good job. I know I was good at it, but I'm really forced by deadlines and pressure. So I was using that kind of energy to excel and not so much like, oh, this makes my heart sing, you know? So the organization was already something that was a struggle for me, even though working at the embassy was a lot better because then it's just a really small organization and you get so much freedom. And then for the content aspect, I knew already for a couple of years, like I want to do something else. I want to work more one-to-one with people and see direct results from my job, from my work. Because working at the big ministry is like you do a lot of work and I think only 5% actually leaves the ministry as a result. The rest is all internally focused. Um, so those two things, and I knew like, oh, I want to help people. I was so intrigued by personal development. Something that I always say to people that who don't know, like they know they want something else for their career, but they don't know what. I ask them, what do you read in your free time or watch? What do you do in your free time when you get into this flow? And I was always reading blogs about personal development and growing and self-help books. So I knew like, that's my area and that's going to be my area of expertise. I already felt that coming up before I actually made the decision. And now that I'm a life coach and helping people living a better life and also being a business owner and entrepreneur, I'm just so happy. I got everything I wanted. I'm really, really happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I love that you're highlighting what do you do in your free time? I had a mentor once say to me, said, what would you do if you could do anything in the world and get paid for it? What would you do? And I was like, well, I'd make art.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'd make art and I would like play with animals. And I would, do something meaningful in terms of like teaching something or like working with people and helping to make the world like a brighter, happier place.
Yeah.
And so obviously one of those things very clearly I get paid for. But the other two things, I have been slowly building things around that because it is true. Like, it is possible to get paid for the things that you love. And
Yeah.
for you, personal development, that's something that you love. You can see the direct results. Like you've made that possible for yourself. So I think it's important to share this message. You can get paid to do what you love.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it takes some effort sometimes and some dedication and hard work. As I said, I work a lot during the day, but it's definitely possible. And the first time I got paid for my coaching services, I was like, wow, this is working, Like it's so amazing to see it and also to see your business grow with every step. Because your business is like, I always say, like I gave birth to a business baby. And now it's slowly getting a bit older. It's going to stand a little bit on its own feet. And it's really nice also to see how your business is maturing. And then it feels normal to get paid for your services. That's also something that you need to learn to understand if you want to start a business. So it's not just about getting paid for doing something that you love, but also if you are an entrepreneur, there are also some money blocks that you might need to deal with as well. um I always, in the beginning, I found it really hard to get paid a really high number for coaching sessions with me. There was some sort of block, even though in other areas of my life I don't experience money blocks. So yeah, we're maybe drifting off a little bit off the topic, but it is so important, I think, because as an entrepreneur, I think personal development is even more important because your business is an extension of you, of yourself. So if you have certain blocks, whether they are money or relationships or anything else, you will see them in your business. They will come up somewhere. And it's so important to know yourself on that deeper level. Like, who am I really with all my flaws and patterns and traps I keep falling into? So you can slowly make different choices and start to believe in this new reality where everything is aligned with who you really are.
Yes, and I'm so happy to talk about money blocks. This is so interesting because someone was just talking to me about this yesterday. They said they were like on a trip with other expats,
Hmm.
and all of the expats that they were like basically saying to them, I really want to work with you, but I don't have the money to. And it's
Yeah.
like, huh, you know, And this individual sharing was like, I don't get it, because like they could be making so much more, but they're not charging like enough so that they can
Yeah.
really thrive. And honestly, like for me, being like I live in Mexico, and I think these individuals are in Mexico too, like the cost of living is not that expensive here. Like if you
Hmm.
charge a fair market value in Mexico, like the fair market value for where your home country is, you can live
Yeah.
pretty well. So that got me thinking, like,
Yeah.
huh, what is happening there, right?
Yeah. 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 Also, if your clients are not willing to pay that price, then one, they are not your ideal client, I think. Traditional expats for sure always have money. And two, sometimes they're not aware yet of what the investment will bring or give them, the rewards of that investment. So it's really important about making that clear as well. What are the rewards of getting coached by you or getting another service from you? That's
Yeah.
super important. Yeah. And also knowing what you're worth. So, and also feeling what you're worth so you can actually charge that. That's another aspect.
Yeah, that was something that was a bit of like a journey for me. When I included me in the pricing process, it got really muddy. Like it just like
Yeah.
when I because there was this aspect of, I felt like I was tying my self worth to what I was charging, but I
Yeah.
took a step back. I took a step back, and my dad, he's been an entrepreneur all my life, and he said, just figure out like your basic cost of living, give yourself a buffer, and
Yeah.
then charge that. Has nothing to do with you. It's not you. This is literally your operating costs, your living costs plus a
Yeah.
bonus. And
Yeah.
that's like,
I think
mhm.
it's a really good advice because if you tie your self-worth to your business and your business results, you're gonna end up suffering because you will face failures, you will face people not wanting your services or people not paying. And if you tie your self-worth to those things, if you attach yourself too much, you're setting yourself up for personal failure as well, I think. So really wise advice from your dad. Take yourself out of the business, basically.
Mhm. Take
Yeah.
yourself out of what you charge for the business.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
take yourself out. And I feel like, money is something that actually does play a role, right? Like when you're deciding to travel and move abroad,
Yeah.
because so I always say, like, you can have the money and you can have the runway, but what I find people do is they kind of, and this is what I see happen when I talk to people, they're like, oh, well, I ran out of money and I have to go back home. You know,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
see this happen a lot. And I'm really with you on the whole like relationship with money, because I always encourage people, like, what is your relationship with money? Like, you have an
Yeah.
attachment style, right? Like we
Yeah.
have the anxious, secure, avoidant,
Avoidance.
disorganized.
Yeah.
And that relationship literally shows up in all aspects of your life. It's going to show up when you're traveling around,
Yeah.
right? It's going to show up in your business, your friendship, your relationship with money. And so I always tell people who are struggling in one aspect of relation in their life, like, okay, well, what is your relationship style? Can you identify how this is showing up around in your life? Because if it's showing up in one place, it's showing up in another place.
Yeah. Yeah. Good tip as well. Yeah. I actually had never thought about it with money, like the relationship with money, but I'm a mix between disorganized and anxious. And now that I think about it, the way that my relationship with money is also very much like my relationships, I think. And also the way that I travel is also very, very disorganized. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm disorganized as well. Fun fact.
Yeah.
So I found that I oscillate between the avoidant and the anxious. And so when I was really diving into doing more of like the inner work to help me just set those foundations for business, I realized, and also for being abroad, right? Because if you have a disorganized like attachment style, when you're traveling, it gets really tricky, because you're like, I want this to be home, I want this to do this, I want this to do that, and you're like, no, I don't want this to be here, I don't want to be here at all, I
Yeah.
want to go
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
I always tell everyone that being in a disorganized like attachment style is, you're always just like oscillating between like two extremes.
Yeah. Yeah. It sure feels that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once I really began to work on just acknowledging, like, oh wow, like my attachment style is showing up in my business, I was really able to start to form a healthy relationship with showing up in my business when things aren't happening. Instead of going to avoid it, I'm just leaving. Oh, how can I actually show up consistently and just support that part of me that wants to be the anxious part, that wants to be soothed and like confirmed.
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone says, like, you're in a relationship with your business, you're in a relationship with yourself, really. But they don't really kind of give you the nuances of what does that really mean?
Yeah, yeah, really good addition. Yeah. I think it's really wise to look at that from that angle. It helps you to understand a little bit more and also know your traps, like what you should do to maintain that balance and peaceful relationship, secure relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
On the topic of relationships, I know
Yeah.
that you do constellation healing. You just got your certification, I
Yes.
saw.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I would love for you to explain this process because we're talking about money and relationships, constellation healing. I've used
Yeah.
it to help me with that. And it's a really powerful tool to help with that. So I'd love for you to just explain how this process really works. Because I feel like people talk about constellation healing a lot, but don't really understand it.
Yeah. So what I do is, well, a mix of a few things, but one of those things is systemic coaching. So normally with normal coaching in a way, I would look at you as an individual. Okay, you've got a problem with your business. What are your patterns? Let's dive into them. With systemic coaching, I look at you as part of a system, and your family is always your primary system, your family of origin. But there are other systems. Your groups of friends are systems. Your countries can be systems, and it almost feels like you're taking a detour because I'm not just going to talk about you, but I'm also going to talk about the other people or the other things in the system, because there are a few rules in a way for systems. And one is that, for example, everything and everything needs to be included. Another one is that everyone needs to be in the right position within that system. And a third one is that it needs to be a balance of giving and taking. And if one of those rules isn't there appropriately, like fulfilled, then there is something is not going right. Something just feels off. And sometimes as an individual, it's really hard to place your finger on it. But when you look at more this systemic approach, it becomes much more visible to see where it's going wrong. And constellations are a way to make that visible. What I do with the constellation work is that I create a constellation either with people or with things on the floor or with little dolls or whatever figures on the table. You can even do it in your imagination. And let's say we would work on your relationship with your business. We would place you somewhere. We would place your business somewhere. We would place money somewhere. Maybe you experience a block. It depends a little bit on your story. And if we work with people, which is something that I've been doing for the past few months as I took my course in this, is that these people are placed by you somewhere, and then I start asking them, how is it here? Like, what do you experience over there? And the information that you get from those people or from that position is just so valuable, because with your own rational or logic thinking or even your emotions, you wouldn't get that information. It's just I understand why people find it hard to understand, because sometimes it really feels like magic. Just yesterday we were having a constellation, and it was a mom and a daughter, and the daughter at some point said, I don't know what it is, but I feel so torn between being a daughter but also being you, the mother. So I don't know what's going on here. And then the person who had brought in the question, who was not part of the constellation, said, oh, well, I understand that because my daughter just got pregnant and she aborted the baby. um so it was like, wow, like the people in the constellation didn't know anything about this, yet the information got there somehow through the emotions that this person in the constellation was feeling about being the mom and being the daughter. So that was super, like, it's almost like magic. How did it get here? So this information that you get, you can really use it for understanding better what's going on internally, but also in your system with the things or people around you. And then eventually in the constellation, it really helps if you can make like a healing move, like if the people in the or the emotions or whatever you're putting there are making a move somewhere, so things get more into place, standing in the right position. Maybe something needs to be said as well, some healing words. It depends on every constellation, but that's basically how I would summarize it.
Super cool. I'm absolutely fascinated with constellations, and I think you did a really good job explaining it because it does feel like magic. However, I truly feel like we all have like an energetic blueprint, right? Like if you just
Hmm.
think about it, like the way your parents interact with you or the way siblings or things, like it's giving off like a certain kind of energy.
Hmm.
And I remember someone told me I bought a sound bowl in Los Angeles and she was like a crystal sound healer, and she told me like energy cannot be destroyed or like disappears, it just transmutes. And so we think about that like it just transforms and transmutes, like the energy we're experiencing in our family system it gets like passed on, right?
Yeah.
And it can be really hard to access that stuff with the conscious mind because it is so deeply ingrained, and it is, I mean, it's some deep like work, but that's why it's systemic. I really love it's systemic because it's true. Like you're getting into the
Yeah.
system, like you're getting into the root of like what is
Yeah.
really happening.
Yeah. And once you get that system like visible, you can also see like, oh, actually all my mothers and aunts and grandmas and whatever, the mother line, were also experiencing things like miscarriages and abortions, or addictions or something else. So it's also like that energy, like you were saying, or some other kind of trauma that is being passed on. Something that I ask my coachees very often is to make a simple like historical line of like a family tree basically, and including also some of the major life events or illnesses. And I had several coachees that said, wow, I never realized that all my, the women in my mother's line, or the man in my father's line, were going through the same things, and that gave them also something to talk about with their parents, which was also super healing. So even just like mapping it out for yourself can already be so valuable, because you get to see like, hey, I'm not the only one experiencing this trauma or this illness, and it can definitely be generational.
Yes, no, it really is, and I've done the exercise before. I family treed out like both my mom's side and my father's side, and I discovered like there were so many patterns. And so when I was thinking about me and I was reflecting on my patterns and how I'm showing up, like, the fear of abandonment or like fear of being yourself, like it really just came out on paper. And part of why I really feel like my move brought me back like to Mexico was because I had to do ancestral healing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I had to change the course of the lineage by coming back, ironically, to where everyone came from.
Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah, it's been a really cool experience and very, very healing. I always tell everyone that, when you travel, it can be healing, but especially when you go to where your roots are from, where you just like
yeah,
take that step back, it can be even more healing because you're really able
yeah,
to just understand and connect with the culture that you
yeah.
came from.
Exactly. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I can only imagine, because I grew up in the Netherlands, and my entire family is from the same town. So I can only imagine. But yeah, you bring those cultural roots with you, or even if your grandma was half Mexican, you still bring it with you, right? So it's so nice, I think, to connect with that part of yourself.
Yes. No, it really is. And just to have an understanding because culture impacts perspective, culture impacts ways
Yeah.
of being. And
Yeah.
so the more you understand that, even if you're just visiting a country or you're going to the
Yeah.
country that ancestrally you're from, it really just makes a world of a difference in understanding and openness and acceptance, which for me all lead to you're just really open and accepting to the
Yeah.
environment that you're in.
Yeah. And I also can imagine that it's almost like you're acknowledging that part of yourself also, or honoring that part of yourself more by going there.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. It really is a journey of that. And I'm sure, wherever you go, there you are. That's literally the past week. That's what everyone's been saying is coming up. Wherever you go, there you are. And
Yes.
I, and so I'm wondering, does this have to do with like healing? Like,
I think it does. Yeah, I think where it doesn't matter where you go, like it's definitely something that I tried in the past, to just leave whenever I wasn't feeling well, depressed or bored or anxious. My escape would always be buy a ticket, start whole new life. It's addictive as well, because you get to build a new life from scratch. And but I realize I keep falling back in the same patterns, and it doesn't matter where I go. I bring myself wherever I go, and you cannot feel happy until you go inwards, until you go on that inwards journey, and really get to know yourself and acknowledge the parts of yourself that are not very pleasant. Yeah, and really look at those parts, so you can start healing and then build your home within yourself.
yeah, that's super important because as adventurous and exciting and kind of addictive it is to travel and start over again all the time, right? Wherever you go, there you are. You bring the same patterns, you bring the same stuff. Like once the
Yeah.
shiny part wears off, it's
Yeah.
just you.
Yeah, exactly. When the adrenaline has stopped, the novelty is worn off, then yeah, you're back to being you again. Yeah. And there's no distraction. So the first few months are always super interesting and fun. And even daily life is interesting, or an adventure when you live abroad. But at some point, the adrenaline stops, and then you have to deal with your own shit again, basically.
Yeah, that's what I said that on something I shared on LinkedIn. I was like, yeah, no, like once I like figured out like my shit suitcase and I organized it and I accepted it, life got a lot more fun, lighter. I was okay just being with myself wherever I was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. On that
Cool.
note, thank you so much for coming and sharing. How can individuals get in contact with you if they want to connect?
Well, you can find me on Instagram. I'm almost there. I'm there almost every day at Amanda Maxime, or my website, amandamaximecoaching.com, or my podcast, This Expat Life. And thank you for
Um,
having me.
yeah, of course. And I'll make sure to link your links in the description. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much again, and thank you all for tuning in for this episode of Roaming the Now with your host Marisol. Until next time, take care.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Roaming the Now. And until next time, make sure to like and subscribe if you found some value in this episode, and check out the links in the description. You can find the link to get the Roaming the Now episodes delivered directly to your inbox in the description below. So until our next episode, have fun, live in the present moment, and enjoy roaming the now wherever you are in the world.